Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third session of Master Your Words, Master Your Life, Java for the Soul. And the title of the class again is the mouth is mightier than the sword. So I want to finish off something from day two, and then we'll move on to day three. So there's a very interesting concept for those that have the book, and again, for those that don't have the book, we still have a couple of copies left. Again, thank you to the Rosenbaum family for sponsoring 5 books for Refuah Shalema for Emily's sister. May she have a Refuah Shalema. It's cutting out again. Is that better? Okay, so just for those that have the book, again, those that don't, just a couple left. So on page 55, it's a very interesting story. I just want to touch upon this for a minute. An episode that they give that one should think about. One of the things that makes us not be aware of Lashon Hara, and it's not only for Lashon Hara, it's really for everything, is that we say, well, everybody does this, right? Everybody does this. The example that they give, if you know this, right? Now that you all have the books, I'm gonna have to do a little more preparation because I can't just read from the book, which is great for me. I love it, right? But so think about when you're driving on the highway, and so of course we're all very safe drivers, and none of us, God forbid, do anything that's illegal. Right? But majority of people speed, right? So you're driving, right, and everybody's going 95 or everybody's going 85. Right, so here in Florida, the speed limit's 70, right, not in the city itself, but out of the city, once you leave the city limits, speed limit's 70. So you're going 85, right, maybe close to 90, and that's the flow of traffic. And since it's a flow of traffic, that's what you decide to do. After driving for a little while, right, the cop pulls you over, right, and says, hey, you know what you were going? Said, yeah, but, I was just going where everybody else was going. What did the cop say? Sorry, too bad. I pulled you over. I don't care what everybody else is doing. Right? I pulled you over. Right? So we see from here, right? We see from here this concept that so many times, and it's really something that we have to think about. Right? So many times we feel okay, right? We feel justified, or more than that, we don't even think about the problem because everybody else is doing it. Right? One of the questions asked, when you're amongst friends or families, do you feel it's more okay to speak Lashon Hara? Something to think about. Right? Do you feel more okay to speak Lashon Hara when you're around friends and family? Or if you hear it, right? Because people are doing it. That's just whatever, that's what's going on. And anybody that says no, well, they really have to do it. Either they're major tzaddikim, right? They're major righteous people, right? Or they're they're fooling themselves. Let's just be honest, right? Because I know myself. Again, I'm not from the most righteous people. I try, right? But I know for myself that when you're around other people and people are schmoozing, and especially family members or friends, right? You feel like you're part of the flow of traffic. Just going what you're doing, part of the flow of traffic. So I just wanted to remind ourselves, we didn't really touch upon this last week because we finished off, we just spoke about the halacha aspect of day 2. But the hashkafic aspect of day 2, the philosophy, something that we have to think about out of day 2 really is that we really, really have to think to ourselves and say, what kind of people are we, right? Are we the flowing, following? Are we easier to speak Lashon Hara, right, when we're around more people, especially people that we're friendly with? Something to think about, something to really think about, because believe it or not, it happens more often than not. Okay, let's go to day 3. And just a reminder, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put it in the text or on Facebook Live, write it in the chat, right? If I pose a question, then you can unmute yourself, right? And feel free to go ahead and ask or comment. But let's try to save most things to the end of the class. Okay, so day 3. So this is a very interesting discussion, right? The question of day 3 is a very fascinating thing. Something is very common, something that happens very often. And we're going to show the difference. Also, what we have to do is we're building things up. We're going to have to show the difference between the dilemma of day 3 and the dilemma of day 2, right? Because the dilemma of day 2, if you remember, just a quick recap, the dilemma of day 2 was the discussion of that that if you know something about someone else, right, that's something negative, right, and other people don't have the same view as them, right? Are you allowed to have that view on them? Are you allowed to tell other people that view? Just give me 1 second. It's really hot in here. Sorry. So are you allowed to tell people about that? And we spoke about you're not allowed to. You have to find some kind of a way to get around it. We gave the example of giving the person that lent something, right? Or it's not necessarily negative. That was day 1. Sorry, day 2 was not necessarily something that's actually negative, right? But it might be perceived as negative. Right? Are you allowed to say that? And we spoke about that. You have to find an interesting way how to make sure that you give the information, right, but not in a negative way. Now, day 3. Let's look at the example of day 3. So I'm going to speak it outside. Feel free to read it inside. Right? You all have the books. And so day 3 is a very interesting discussion. A speaker comes to town. Right? Thank God, anytime we bring a lot of speakers. We used to before COVID. Right, God willing, we're gonna start speakers on Zoom. We're working on doing like a speaking bureau over Zoom. We're working on it, right? But for example, a prime example, and it's a good way to advertise our program, right? This Sunday, right, we're having David Sussman, a tour guide from Israel, right? I think he's a phenomenal tour guide. We're gonna have a live showing, right? Good for the whole family. Feel like you're living in the land of Israel, right? Not recorded, right? Live. Right, so now someone asks you, let's say you heard him. Right? Let's say you heard him. I don't want to talk about David Sussman himself because I just advertised him. I personally think he's great. But let's talk about Yankel Pfefferkorn. Right, so Yankel Pfefferkorn, right, is a tour guide in Israel, or he's a speaker, right? And you heard him speak before. And someone asked you, said, oh, the speaker's coming into town. You know, what do you think about him? I saw this organization bring him in. Right? What do you think about him? Now, he's a good speaker. He has great content, but he doesn't talk to you. And he doesn't talk to you. You don't feel he's that dynamic, right? Or you feel he's too dynamic, right? Everybody has their own thing. You feel he's too dynamic. I remember we brought in a speaker once, right, here in town, an awesome speaker, phenomenal speaker, right? And I was like, okay, this is gonna be a home run. Like, you know, he's phenomenal. He has great content. He's energetic. He's just phenomenal. And he is. And we think, oh, we got a very big crowd. Right? It was for one of the only moods. And someone came to me a little early, saying, I heard this speaker speak. He's too fluff, right? He's too energetic, right? He's not intellectual enough. And now actually his content is extremely intellectual, but he puts it in a way that's fun, and he puts it in a way that entertaining, because a lot of people are just not those strict intellectuals. And there's nothing wrong with them. I love them, right? It's what's it called again? A lot of times, right? They have a hard time with people that are not a little more exciting. So this guy, right? This guy, he was complaining that this speaker was too energetic. So everybody has something. Everybody has some kind of problem with a speaker, right? There's not one speaker that fits all, and that's the way life works, right? I was actually very surprised. I remember I was like, really? You're having a hard time with the speaker? Okay, no problem, right? You don't have to come, right? I told him, why don't you come and check it out? He came, right? He left halfway through. That's fine, right? But the question over here is, right? Having a discussion about something is fine. You're allowed to give your opinion, right? For example, what kind of chicken do you like, right? Okay, I like personally like the white, right? Everybody in my family thinks I'm crazy, right? I like the white. They all like the dark, right? I like the white also with like gravy on top, right? Because it makes it like a little. It's the white, but it makes it a little more moist. And okay, I'm not going to get all into all the food I like, right? You guys know I love talking about that, right? I like eating them more than talking about it, right? But not to get off track, right? But we're allowed to talk about what we like, right? What vacation you like to go to, what kind of car you like, do I like biography over fiction? But how about a speaker? How about an individual, right? It's your taste, it's your thoughts, right? What are you allowed to talk about it or not? So now you all have the books, right? So I can ask your opinions, right? If you looked at it or if you didn't look at it, right? But the idea is like this. So the comment the Chafetz Chaim says, and this needs to be explained a little bit because I looked a little more into it, and it's you have to be careful with the way it's presented, right? The commentaries say that you're not allowed to, right? You have to be careful, right, not to say it in a way that it will be perceived as you're saying something negative about the speaker, right? So they say like this: criticizing the speaker is lashon hara. All right, your comments imply that he's ineffective and may result in people, right, deciding against going to hear him. This is clearly derogatory information. So I want to put a caveat to that. It's not as clear as they say, right? Of course, saying negative about a speaker, right, saying negative about someone is lashon hara, right? Just like we explained last time, even implying something of lashon hara could be lashon hara, like last week's class, right, with the rich man that was giving $100, right? So even implying it is lashon hara. But over here, and it really depends on how you present it. Now, I've been asked this question before, right? We'll talk about the last line in a minute, right? I've been asked this question before, right? And I'm sure you all have been asked this question, right? What do you think about the speaker, right? What do you think about that play, right? Okay, so a play is not necessarily one individual, right? But what do you think about that singer, right? About that band, right? About in a bigger city, what do you think about that caterer, right? So it really depends on the caterer is a little different situation because you're paying for it, and we'll see that's the last line where there could be a toelis, a benefit, right? But more, let's not talk about that case itself. But the speaker, you want to go to the speaker, right? Or not. So you have to be very careful how you present it. The way I generally present it, and if someone asks me, I said, listen, I started this conversation. I said, different people have different interests, right? Different people have different things that attract them, right? The same way some people like horror movies and some people like, fantasy, right? And feel good, right? And love stories, right? And then you have other people like, thrillers, right? So a lot of people like different kind of things. And it doesn't make one better than the other. And therefore you could say, listen, I personally like more of an intellectual speaker. I personally like more of a entertaining, storyteller kind of speaker. I more like, a singer with a more high-pitched voice. I like more chazanis. I like more, rock and roll, or whatever it is, right? I'm just telling you what I personally like, and therefore, right, the speaker, I've heard him, he has great content, right, and people love him, right, but he just doesn't talk to me because of my own personal feelings of what I like and what I don't like. And so you hear, I didn't say, oh yeah, he's a good speaker, but he doesn't talk to me. Well, when you just present it that way, right? So what are you saying? You're saying he's a good speaker, but he doesn't talk to me, right? And what can people take out of it? He doesn't talk to you because, he's a good speaker, whatever, but he's not the best. And it really is really important the way you present it. And yes, you might have to use a couple extra words, right? By saying, listen, he's a phenomenal speaker, right? He gets good crowds, right? He's world renowned. People love him. Personally, right? I like a different kind of speaker. I like a more intellectual kind of speaker. So I had to clarify this because the paragraph is a little short, and I'm actually a little disappointed that they didn't explain it this way, right? You don't have to not give your opinion, right? You don't have to not give. You're not saying anything negative. The way you're presenting it now, you're making it like, is it chicken, right, or is it meat? Right? Of course, meat, not chicken, right? But is it meat or chicken, right? Is it horror or fiction? Right? Is it a thriller or a love story? Right? Is it, blue roses or red roses? It's you're making it now that there's different feelings and people like different things. That's something very important to remember, because this is something that comes up very often. Comes up very often. And a lot of times, if it's not presented in the right way, right? If it's not presented in the right way, and it's and it's just sort of a quick, oh yeah, he's a good speaker. It's not my favorite. If you hear that, what would you think? What would be the initial reaction if you heard someone answer you that way? Now, if you presented this, listen, different people have different strokes for different folks. We all have different things that we enjoy, right? He's really a good speaker. He's world renowned. Look, he's brought into so many different cities, he or she, right? His music is really his music is really appreciated by people. Me personally, like when people ask me about music, personally, I say, listen, I'm not really a music person, right? I'm not really a music person, right? But people say that they like it, right? I don't know, right? That when people ask me about music, because I'm not. I like music. I like sound, right? I like hearing a beat, right? Yeah, there's certain music I like more, right? Personally, right? I know I'm being recorded, right? But personally, when I'm traveling, let's say when the before COVID, when I went to professional development and it was within driving range, so I'll drive by myself in the car, right? I like actually putting on country music, right? If there's a lady singing, I'll change it. I'll change it. Right, but if there's a man saying, I personally like that rhythm, like that country music a little bit, personally, I like it, right? But so different people like different things. It's really, really, really in this scenario, right? It is so important to remember it's the way you present it, because we're not talking like the case before that's straight out evil. Right? It's so important to remember that it's the way we present it. I'm going to open up for a second. If anybody wants to, I allowed people to unmute themselves. Any questions or comments on this halacha, and then we'll move on to the next page. Go ahead, Emily.
I unmuted myself. I just think I think this is a very challenging topic, because I think like if you said, I like someone who's a little more intellectual. Let's say I've never heard the person, you've heard the person, right? And I'm coming to you for your opinion. I might be like, oh, the person's not intellectual. I'm not going to try it. You know what I'm saying? So it may be that what you're saying. So I wouldn't like. What's the worst that happens if I go and I also don't like it, right? Versus like, hey, this person. Why don't you give it a try? This person is very entertaining. Like. I'm saying sometimes when you say something like this person is there, I don't like it because they're not so intellectual. I think then that sometimes people will be like, oh, so I'm not going to go. And like, but maybe for that other person, it may be that it is intellectual for the other person. You know what I mean? So I think
so Emily, you're 100% correct. Even there, you have to be very careful how you present it, right? You could say that this speaker, I wouldn't say he's not so intellectual, right? What I would say is that I would say I like a very intellectual speaker, right? His information is extremely deep. The way he presents it, right, is not the way he presents it is not in like an intellectual kind of professor way. He presents his information, right, more in a in an exciting, dramatic, with stories. That's how he presents it. Now that's how he is. Right? You're not lying, and you're not implying that he's not an intellectual speaker, right? But at the same time, right, you're not saying anything negative. And if this speaker is more of a professor kind of person, right, so then you won't go. And if he's not, so then he'll try it. And I would, of course, always say, why don't you go try it for yourself, right? And you're right. I would always say also, and I forgot about this. You're right. Why don't you try it out for yourself? I've heard the speaker before. Right? Why don't you go try it out? It's one day. If you like him, right, or her, right, next time he's brought in or she's brought in, right, you could go back, right? Or, I know he gives a lot of, classes online, right? He has videos on YouTube or Torah anytime, right? If it doesn't talk to you, so then okay, so you can leave halfway through. You don't have to say the whole thing, or you won't lose that much. You'll still get knowledge. It just won't be the most, entertaining or thing for you, right? So but you have to still be honest with the person, right? This is sort of where you can't say, oh, you're going to love it. I've had this sometimes. People say, oh, you're going to love it. I didn't like it. And it's not right. It's not right. I have to be able to make my own decision. Right? But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you're not saying anything negative about the person. Right? So you have to have that balance. You're right. That person might not be as intellectual as you are, and that person might have a juk in their head. Now, a juk in Hebrew is a cockroach. Right? It's a saying, like they have like a thing in their head. Right? They have a juk in their head that they think they need to hear intellectual, and they want to know that they hear the most intellectual. They actually like entertaining speakers, right? And they don't want to admit it. They hear, oh, it's not intellectual, so they feel that they're going away from the Ivy League college, right? Kind of thing. So, you, of course, you have to present it a certain way, and you have to make sure that someone doesn't think that there's not content in there. Or if it's an intellectual speaker, but he does have some jokes and things like that, but the way he presents himself is more, rigid at the podium, speaking and, pointing to a chart on the wall, right? Kind of speaker, right? Which is nothing wrong with that, right? That doesn't talk to some people. You still have to say, listen, he's exciting, but his more, more of a podium kind of speaker. There's nothing wrong with saying that. As long as you say, and always say, why don't you try it out for yourself? Right? Why don't you try it? You're right. You have to be careful about, that other people might have a different understanding of what intellectual means or what entertaining means, right? They might have a different level of how much intellectual, right? So you're right. You have to make sure that you emphasize that it has knowledge. You have to make sure that he emphasizes that, right? But at the same time, you also have to give the person the right information without saying anything negative about the person. Now it's that person's call what they want to do with that information. Good point. Any other points or comments? Okay, so now let's move on to the next page, 57. This is something connecting to what we started off the class with today, right? And something very important, extremely important, right? So we start off the class today with that there are sometimes, right? It's really page 55, right? We spoke about that when you hang out with certain people, you might be more pro not to even think about Lashon Hara. It's like the person traveling, you're just following the crowd, if it's family or friends or things like that, right? And you have to be aware of that. Right? Page 55 talks about, right, 3 steps, right, how to make sure at the pinpoint not to get caught up in speaking Lashon Hara. Right? There are times, right, that that there's certain places or certain times or certain things that you become more prone to Lashon Hara. Right? So, for example, right, is it in shul by Kiddush? Right? Now we don't have Kiddush really. I mean, not in shul. Right? So that's something that right now is automatically being taken care of. Right? But that's a big place. Shul, Kiddush. Yeah, you hang around and this and that. Right? During break and between Mightier, right? People hang around. Now you can tell who wrote this book. Right? They say standing at the bus stop, right, for the bus to pick up the kids. Now we don't have that here in Jacksonville. That's more of a New York thing. Right, stopping, waiting for the kids at the bus stop or Muncie or bigger cities where the school bus will come to the different bus stops and pick up the kids. We don't really have that here in Jacksonville. Most people drive their kids, or even if they do, right? Even if they do, right, it's not really standing at the bus stop. So it's just interesting. You can see the examples that's written by the person that gave it, right? But if it's at the water cooler in work. Right? If it's in your kitchen preparing for Kiddush, very good. Right? Whatever it is, right? There's certain places that Lashon Hara is more common to be spoken, right? Because you're in a downtime. You're more loose. Right? Again, same thing. Following the flow. Sort of a connection to the thing before. You're following the flow. Right? And over here, it's not so much the following the flow, right? But it's the whole thing, the whole atmosphere, right, of these places are places where it's more prone. Why? Because you're not doing anything, right? Downtime. And I want to talk about downtime for a minute. Right now, trust me, I am the first one to want downtime. I like sitting on my couch and doing nothing. Right? I do. Right? I do. I'm honest. Right? Some people, they always need to be busy. I like sitting. I like sitting. Right? I like sitting on a mountaintop. Right, and just staring out. Right, I could do it. Right, I like sitting at the beach and just looking at the waves. I like it. I do. I like it. Right? But at the same time, we have to be wary and careful of downtime. That downtime doesn't mean to say just sitting on the couch. Downtime means to say that you're not actively doing other things. Right? The Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Father, speaks very, very strongly about atzlos, about laziness. Now, laziness is not, atzlos is not what we think laziness being a couch potato, as we call it. Right? It means to say having time when you're not doing anything. Because when you're not busy with other things, and as Pirkei Avos says, leads to avera, leads to sin, leads to transgression. It can lead to many kind of transgressions. Right? It can lead to doing things online that you don't really supposed to. It could be lashon hara like we spoke to. It could be hanging out with people that you're not supposed to. Whatever it is, a variety of different things. Right? That's not the topic of today's class. Right? But downtime is something that's extremely important to be wary of. Right? It's extremely important to be wary of downtime. And downtime you could be now doing lashon hara on Facebook, on texting, right? Instagram, FaceTime, or many other forms, even if you're in your own home, because your mind gets clouded with things, and you need to be busy, and you need to feel like you're doing something, even though you don't want to do anything, right? So downtime is the time that one has to be very, very careful. There's nothing wrong with downtime, not too much downtime, right? But there's nothing wrong with downtime, but one has to be really careful of downtime. So now they give 3 things to think about. And I want to talk about these 3 things for a couple minutes. They say give 3 things to talk about how to make sure, right, not to get caught up, right, in these different places and these different things, right, that are prone to lashon hara. So let's go through them. Number 1, identifying, right, those times so you can be mentally prepared for what lies ahead. So now this is very important. Before even thinking about what to do during that time, one has to mentally prepare themselves. One has to be in tune with themselves that they know that is a hard time for them. They know that this is a time that they're more prone to speak lashon hara. They're, Shabbos afternoon, right? They have guests over, right? They're hanging around the couch, right? Whatever it is, the kids are playing in the playroom, or they're outside running their whatever it is, right? And that's more of a time. You start talking about the teacher, you start talking about the neighbor, you start talking about your cousin, you start talking about this, you start talking about that, and conversation flows. So you have to mentally prepare yourself, right? You have to remind yourself. You have to say, hey, that is a time that I know. Now, I'm not saying not to have that time, right? It's good, it's important, but you have to mentally prepare yourself and to know that is a time that's hard. That is a time that there's danger. In the same way, right? Someone that is, climbing a mountain, right? Prepares themselves for climbing the mountain, right? They have a checklist of things, right? Because they know that it's hard to climb a mountain, and there's danger behind climbing a mountain, right? I don't mean like a hill, like a real mountain, right? So you have to prepare yourself. So you have to prepare yourself, right, for those times. Now, how are some of the ways of preparing yourself? Either make a plan, minimize the period of time. For instance, right, if the school bus stop, right, is a problem, go a little closer to the time that the bus arrives, right, and leave it as soon as the bus departs, right? If it's kiddush, right, make sure that you get your food, you hang out with your kids, right? You hang out with people that are not necessarily people who like to gossip, right? There's ways of doing it. If it's in the kitchen, right? Make sure don't go in there. If you know that that's a problem, so don't do that. Find a different chesed to do. Even that, don't do that. You don't have to do. You have to drop your kids off, right? But don't do that. If it's Shabbos afternoon, right? Either minimize it or be careful. Think about it, right? You have to try to minimize the time, right, or change the location, right? That's something, and you can only do that if you're mindful and you're aware of what's going to happen. Because if you're not aware, if you're not thinking about it, it's just going to creep up on you, and then you're caught in it. And then you caught in it. I remember, this is a general thing. I remember asking my head of my yeshiva, a blessed memory, Chaim Epstein, may his memory be for a blessing. He actually married me in Devorah, right? I remember asking him once, right? I said, when you're like in the struggle, and whatever the struggle is, if it's lashon hara, right? If it's screaming at someone, right? If it's something to do with Shabbat, if it's kosher, whatever it is, whatever struggle someone is having, right? I said, when you're in the struggle, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to overcome it, and it's so hard. I remember him telling me something very powerful. And it's so true. He said, when you're in a struggle, you're most probably going to lose the war. Probably are. He said, when is the time to fight the struggle? Is before the struggle starts, for example. He says, an army, right? When do they start training? When do they learn how to shoot a gun? When do they learn how to fly a plane? Right? When do they do it? Before the war, and not during the war. During the war, it's instinct. They're relying on their instinct. They shouldn't be thinking of, oh, right, I have to shoot the gun. Oh, right, I have to make sure that I breathe. Right? Oh, right, I have to press that button and that button. Right? You don't want to be thinking during the war. You want to be relying on instinct because there's so many things to go. You have to rely. So to a surgeon, right? The last thing you want is a surgeon look at his book. Oh, right, I have to clamp that. Right? Oh, I have to insert here. Right? No, it's be all instinct. Right? That's why there's training and there's and all that stuff because it has to be instinct. She said the same thing is with our fight against the evil inclination. It has to be that it's instinct, right? It has to be that it's instinct. It has to be that we're prepared for the war before the war starts. And the same thing with Lashon Hara. That's what they're saying. We have to mentally prepare ourselves, right, for the challenge and make sure that we put in play certain instincts that happen when we hear something about Lashon Hara. And let's just go to the next one, right? For mentally think of some interesting topics, right? To introduce other people. Do not become a topic that or make a different topic conversation, right? So there's ways of doing it. Right? It should be part of the instinct that if you hear them starting to talk about someone and there's nothing well, it's what you'll learn about that, right? What falls under. It's not just giving your opinion, right? Is Lashon Hara, right? So change the conversation. Say, oh my gosh, I went to last week's Jags game, right? I heard they got a touchdown. That was phenomenal. Isn't that cool that they actually got a touchdown, right? Change the conversation, right? Talk about the latest Broadway show that you went to, if you like that. I mean, people like that, right? But, whatever it is, right? Talk about, how cute your children are, right? Or change the conversation. Or Shabbos afternoon, it's going to be a long time. Start. Let's have a game. Let's play a game. Let's play, a clue. Let's play. Let's play something. Right? Let's do a different activity and that occupy ourselves and not have to fall into the trap of yabbling, right? Talking, and then it's the Lashon Hara. And so these are certain things that we have to be mindful of. Preparing for the war. Right? And again, it's the same thing, making sure you don't go down a certain place. Make sure you don't go on a certain, sometimes you can't. Minimize the time that you're there, right? Make sure that you hang out with other people. Right? And again, if not, make sure that you have conversation that you could always change the conversation with. And, I can't say that I've always been successful. Lashon Hara is something that we all, and that's what we're learning it again, and that's what we're studying again. It should be a chizuk, it should be strengthening ourselves in it. But I try sometimes, at our Shabbos table, whatever it is, I try to, change the conversation. A lot of times at the Shabbos table, it's easy. I said, who knows what's going on in this week's Torah portion, right? What do you learn in school today? Try to change the conversation. Just try to change the conversation. And more times than not, other people just follow suit. Sometimes people feel that they don't want to change the conversation because they're going to feel like other people are like, oh, why do you? Right? And they're going to look down at you. Like, no, more times than not, right? We don't realize, but more times than not, people are just going to follow the conversation because people are, in a trance, right? People are in a trance of conversation. So, a trance of conversation, right, of Lashon Hara, right? Or is it a trance of conversation, right, of something else, right? They're in a trance of conversation. So it's important to not be scared, right, to change the conversation. Now, I just want to speak about one more thing, right? And then we'll start the next halakha. I think we should do that. I like that. We'll start the next halakha, and then next week we'll elaborate more into it. Right? We still have 5 minutes left. So I want you to look at the statement, the quote of the day, right? That's very cool. I like the quote. Not always do I talk about the quote of the day, right? Again, it's, you guys all can read it. But today's quote of the day is very powerful, right? Just as people's faces do not resemble one another, so too their thought process do not resemble one another. Now, why is it such a powerful statement? Okay, no duh, right? Right? This is from Bamidbar Rabbah. It's a midrash, right? From the book of Bamidbar. Right? Well, what I think what they're bringing this quote over here is because it really fits into what we're saying. Right? Our thought process is different, do not resemble one another. Meaning to say that just because someone else is talking about something, right, doesn't mean to say that you have to be thinking about that. And just because you think that maybe they'll look down on you or they'll think you're being whatever, right, because you're going to change the conversation, right? Don't allow that. Don't allow that, right? Don't allow that to be that way, right? So, meaning to say that we have to realize that what you're thinking in your head, what you think they're thinking about you, or the way you look at whatever it is not necessarily how they're thinking. They're just ready for another, they just want to smooth or whatever it is. And so it's important to remember that, right? And in that way, a lot of times it will allow you to have that strength, right? That inner strength to say, okay, I'm gonna change the conversation because I can. Right? I'm not gonna hang out with those people right now. They're not. You don't have to make a big deal out of it, right? That's a problem, right? Right? Make a big deal. Oh, I'm not gonna hang out with you guys in the kitchen before Kiddush, right? Because you guys are people, right? You're transgressing so many other averos right there, right? That's not the way to do it, right? You have to make sure that you do it in a more proper way, right? Just don't go over to them, right? Don't go over to them. Don't make a big deal. Just don't go over to them. Go hang out with other people. And I'm always hanging out with them. And they're going to think, and they're going to make this, they're going to make that. You're thinking it in your head, not necessarily they thinking in their head, right? Just because that's what your thought is right now doesn't mean to say that's what they're thinking, right? So you got to do what you think is right, right? Again, do it in a healthy manner, right? But you have to do what you think is right, and don't be so caught up on what they're thinking about you, because just because you're thinking it doesn't mean to say that they're thinking. Okay, any questions or comments on anything that we just spoke about now? Yes, Martha.
Hello, good morning. Okay, so what I was thinking of was like every day I call my mother and I have to prepare for it, and I can feel it in her voice if she's going to say something or I'm going to say something, or we're talking about maybe a sibling of mine that she favors, something like that. Then I can hear it in her voice. So I like this part of it because of that. I can feel great. That we don't want to say the bad things, but sometimes you feel like you have to say something. I don't know.
Right. So you have to, again, right, and you have to be careful. And again, it's always something like that is always good to switch the conversation. Always, if you feel that you're being led into a trap, your own trap, not that they're doing it, right? But if you feel that way, right, always switch the conversation. Talk about something. Talk about shopping. About online shopping or whatever it is, right? Try to change the conversation to something different. Okay, I just want to let's just finish off over here. I'll take questions and answers in 2 minutes. I just want to introduce next week's discussion. Right, it's a very interesting one. Right, this one is over here, right, where it's going to need more of an in-depth, and I just want to throw this out. For example, this happens all the time, right? This happens all the time where, I'm talking to my kids, right? And they speak about, either some trouble that they got in school. God forbid they don't get in trouble, right? Or whatever it is, and you want to say things that you did. You want to show your kid that you were cool when you were a kid, right? So you know what I did when I was a kid, right? Or something like that, right? So the example they give, right, is your to be son-in-law or son, whatever son. I don't care why they give. I don't know why son-in-law, right? But they're going driving, right? And they're going with some friends, and they have to make a wedding, right? And he said, "Oh yeah, when I was your age, me and my two cousins, right? We drove through the night, and we zipped through, and we got some tickets, but we got to the thing, and right, they throw in jail over there. I think that's a little excessive, but okay, right? But you sort of you're talking about yourself. You're not meaning to say lashon hara, right? But you're through your conversation. You're not even saying it as something negative. You're saying it as something cool, right? Something like, I was just a lame guy when I was younger, right? I was like, I did X, Y, and Z, in school. I did that when I was this, and we did me and my buddies. We hung out there and we did that and whatever it is, right? But there is some negative there, right? There is something that you did that wasn't necessarily the right thing, right? So are you allowed to say that or not? You're not saying it in a derogatory way at all, right? And you're including yourself in it, right? But you're also including other people, right? So are you allowed to say that, or you're not allowed to say that? So let's leave that for next week. All right, we'll talk about that next week, God willing. And there's actually two caveats that have to be thought about there. Number one is yourself, which we're not really talking about less than about yourself. That's later on, but it's important to bring that in here. And why is it not? Right? And then about the other people, but they're included with you, so you know that you're not saying it in a negative way. So that's where God willing, we're gonna talk about next week. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm gonna turn off the record.